Have you ever noticed how some people can walk into a room and without saying a single word, the entire atmosphere shifts? It's almost as if they have this invisible remote control, and with just a subtle withdrawal, a quiet step back, they command respect, curiosity, even a little bit of fear. They don't need to shout, they don't need to beg for attention, and they certainly don't need to perform emotional gymnastics to be noticed. They simply exist, and the world adjusts around them. Now imagine if you could do the same. Imagine if, instead of always being the first to react, the first to comfort, the first to jump in and fix things, you chose to pause, to hold back, to let silence do the talking for once. What would happen if you stopped being so available, emotionally, physically, psychologically? Would the world fall apart? Would people chase after you, or would they simply move on to the next person willing to give themselves away? That's the question at the heart of today's conversation. Because whether we realize it or not, our availability, our tendency to react, to please, to always be present, shapes not just our relationships, but our very sense of self-worth. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. So let's dive deeper into this idea and explore how the trap of constant availability might be holding you back from the life and the peace you truly deserve. Let's be honest. Most of us have been trained since childhood to believe that our worth is measured by how much we give to others. Remember those early lessons? Share your toys, don't say no, always be polite, always be helpful. Somewhere along the way, this well-meaning advice morphed into a kind of emotional contract. If you're always available, always ready to help, always quick to respond, then you're a good person, you're valuable, you're loved. But here's the twist. What if this constant availability isn't a virtue at all? What if it's actually a very elegant, very subtle prison? Think about it. When you're always there, always ready to jump in, you become predictable. And predictability, as comforting as it sounds, is the enemy of respect. People start to see you not as a person, but as a resource. You become the emotional emergency button, pressed whenever someone needs validation, comfort, or just a distraction from their own problems. And the more you give, the more you're expected to give. It's like being on call for a job you never applied for, with no pay and no days off. You start to believe that if you're present for everyone, someone will eventually be present for you. But that's the illusion. The reality is, the more you make yourself available, the less others value your presence. What's abundant is rarely treasured. Carl Jung had a word for the mask we wear to be accepted and loved: the persona. It's the version of ourselves we present to the world, carefully crafted to win approval and avoid rejection. But here's the catch. When your persona is built on being endlessly available, you end up abandoning your true self. You say yes when you want to say no. You respond when you're exhausted. You explain yourself, justify yourself, defend yourself, as if you owe the world an explanation for simply existing. And with every forced yes, every immediate reply, you chip away at your own energy, your own peace. So what's the cost of this self-abandonment? What happens when you're always on, always giving, always reacting? That's where the real price of emotional reactivity comes in, and it's a price most of us don't even realize we're paying until we're completely drained. So, let's take this a step further. If being constantly available is the first trap, then being constantly reactive is the second, and it's just as exhausting, if not more. You see, it's not just about being present for others. It's about how we respond, often without thinking, to every little thing that comes our way. Someone criticizes you, and you feel the need to defend yourself. Someone sends a passive-aggressive text, and you're already typing out a 3-paragraph response. Someone posts something online that rubs you the wrong way, and suddenly you're in a heated debate with a stranger at 2 in the morning. Sound familiar? It's like living life with your emotional notifications turned on. Every ping, every buzz, every little poke demanding your attention and your energy. Carl Jung had a fascinating perspective on this. He saw the human mind not as a machine that just reacts to stimuli, but as an energy system. Every thought, every emotion, every action, each one consumes a bit of what he called psychic energy. And here's the kicker. That energy is limited. It's not an all-you-can-eat buffet. Every time you react impulsively, every time you jump to defend yourself or get sucked into a pointless argument, you're spending that precious energy. It's like making 100 tiny withdrawals from your emotional bank account every single day, and before you know it, you're overdrawn. And what happens when you're running on empty? You become vulnerable. Emotional exhaustion isn't just about feeling tired. It's about losing your center, your boundaries, your ability to choose your battles. When you're drained, you're easy prey for manipulation. People who thrive on drama, who know exactly which buttons to push, can sense when you're low on energy. They know you'll react, that you'll try to fix things, that you'll give just a little bit more, even when you have nothing left to give. It's a vicious cycle. The more you react, the more you're drained, and the more you're drained, the easier you are to control. But here's where things get really interesting. If you're always reacting, always giving away your energy, you're not just losing yourself. You're opening the door to a whole new level of manipulation. And that's exactly what we need to talk about next. How others use your reactivity and availability to their advantage, often without you even realizing it. Now, let's peel back another layer. If you've ever wondered why certain people seem to have a sixth sense for pushing your buttons, it's not just bad luck or coincidence. It's actually a hidden dynamic that's been playing out beneath the surface, and it's all about projection and manipulation. See, when you're emotionally available and reactive, you become the perfect canvas for other people's unresolved issues. Carl Jung called this projection, the psychological mechanism where people unconsciously project onto others what they can't or won't see in themselves. It's like emotional outsourcing. Instead of dealing with their own insecurities, fears, or frustrations, they hand them over to you, and suddenly you're carrying baggage that was never yours to begin with. And here's where it gets tricky. The more available you are, the more you become a blank screen for these projections. You're not just being helpful or supportive. You're becoming the stage for someone else's drama. That friend who only calls when they're in crisis, the partner who needs you to fix everything, the colleague who dumps their stress on you. None of this is random. They're not relating to you as a person, but to the role you've agreed to play. And why do we agree? Because deep down, we're afraid of disappointing, of being rejected, of not being loved. We're afraid that if we don't show up, if we don't react, we'll lose our place in their lives. But the most effective manipulation doesn't happen with shouting or threats. It happens in the quiet moments, in the silence of guilt and obligation. You feel like you owe them your time, your energy, your attention, even when it's costing you your peace. You keep reacting, keep giving, keep explaining yourself because you're trapped in this invisible web of emotional debt. And the more you play your part, the more you reinforce the pattern. It's a cycle that feeds on your predictability, on your willingness to be the emotional safety net. But what if you stopped playing along? What if you broke the cycle and refused to be the canvas for someone else's projections? That's where the real shift begins, and it all starts with the power of silence and conscious withdrawal, a power that can change everything about how you relate to the world and to yourself. So, what happens when you finally decide to step out of the script? When you stop reacting, stop explaining, and simply choose silence? This is where things get interesting, because silence, when chosen consciously, is not just the absence of words. It's a presence, a force, a game changer. But let's be clear, I'm not talking about the silence of resignation, the kind where you just give up and let life steamroll you. I'm talking about strategic, lucid silence. The kind of silence that comes from awareness, not avoidance. It's the difference between hiding in a corner and standing in the center of the room, quietly unshakable, watching the chaos swirl around you without being pulled in. When you choose this kind of silence, you disrupt the entire dynamic. Suddenly, the people who relied on your reactions, your explanations, your emotional labor, they're left with nothing to bounce off of. The projections they once cast onto you start to crumble because you're no longer playing the role they assigned. And here's the magic. Your silence forces them to confront themselves. Without your predictable responses, they have to face their own discomfort, their own emptiness, their own unresolved issues. It's like taking away someone's favorite toy and watching them realize they have to entertain themselves for the first time. Carl Jung believed that this process, what he called individuation, requires a period of distancing. Not as a punishment, not as a retreat from life, but as a necessary step towards self-discovery. Only in silence can you really hear your own voice, separate from the noise of everyone else's expectations. Only in withdrawal can you see the patterns that have kept you stuck, the roles you've been playing, the energy you've been giving away without even realizing it. And yes, it can be uncomfortable. People might accuse you of being cold, distant, or even arrogant. But that's just the old system trying to pull you back in. The truth is, this kind of silence is not about absence. It's about amplified presence. It's about reclaiming your energy, your boundaries, your sense of self. And as you begin to master this, you'll notice something else. The price and the power of silence, and how it can completely reshape your relationships in your life. Now, let's talk about what really happens when you start to become unavailable. When you choose silence over explanation, boundaries over endless giving. At first, it's not all peace and enlightenment. In fact, it can feel downright uncomfortable. You might notice a wave of guilt washing over you, as if you've broken some unspoken rule. People around you might start to question your motives. Why are you so distant? Are you mad at me? You've changed. And let's be honest, there's a part of you that wants to rush back in, to reassure everyone, to smooth things over. But here's the thing, that discomfort is actually a sign that you're doing something right. You're breaking the old patterns, and the system is resisting. Setting boundaries and embracing silence doesn't mean you're disappearing. Quite the opposite. True silence isn't about absence. It's about amplified presence. It's about being so rooted in yourself that you no longer need to fill every gap with words, explanations, or apologies. It's about sovereignty, about owning your space and your energy without needing anyone else's permission. And yes, this new presence can be unsettling for those who were used to the old, always available version of you. They might accuse you of being cold or selfish, but what they're really feeling is the loss of control over your reactions. Here's where the real power of silence comes in. When you stop feeding the cycle, when you refuse to play the same emotional games, you start to see people's true colors. Some will drift away, unable to handle your new boundaries. Others will try to provoke you, desperate to get a reaction. But the ones who remain, the ones who respect your silence, are the ones who truly value you, not just your availability. In this space, you begin to reconstruct yourself. You start to see which relationships are built on genuine connection and which were just using you as an emotional crutch. And as you settle into this new way of being, you realize that silence isn't just a shield. It's a tool for transformation. It's the foundation for learning how to manage your energy, to be selective with your soul, and to finally reclaim your peace. And that's exactly where we're headed next. So, you've discovered the power of silence and the freedom that comes with setting boundaries. But what now? How do you actually live this out day by day without slipping back into old habits? This is where the real work begins. Relearning how to manage your energy and understanding that being selective isn't selfish. It's self-respect in action. Think of your time, your attention, your emotional investment as precious resources. You wouldn't hand out your bank PIN to just anyone, so why give away your energy so freely? Start with the small things. You don't have to respond to every message the moment it arrives. Let your phone buzz for a while. Trust me, the world won't end if you don't reply instantly. When someone tries to drag you into a pointless argument or drama, pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself, is this really worth my energy? Most of the time, the answer is a resounding no. And when it comes to saying no, do it without guilt. You don't need to justify your boundaries or explain your absence. "Not today" is a complete sentence. "I'm not interested" is a valid response. The more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. Carl Jung spoke about the necessity of sacred isolation, a period where you step back from the noise and rebuild your identity from within. This isn't about cutting yourself off from the world, but about reconnecting with your own voice, your own needs, your own truth. In this space, you learn to listen to yourself first, before the demands of others drown you out. You begin to see that your energy is not infinite, and that protecting it is an act of self-love, not selfishness. As you become more selective, you'll notice a shift. The people who truly value you will respect your boundaries. The ones who only wanted your energy will fall away. And in this new clarity, you'll find a deeper sense of peace and strength, a foundation for the next stage of your journey, where solitude becomes not a punishment, but a source of true freedom. Now let's talk about what comes after you've set those boundaries and reclaimed your energy. There's a moment, a quiet, sometimes unsettling moment, when you realize you're alone. Not in the sense of being abandoned, but in the sense that the noise has faded, the distractions have fallen away, and you're left with yourself. This is the aftermath of choosing yourself, and it's where many people get scared and turn back. But here's the secret. There's a world of difference between the loneliness of absence and the solitude of presence. The loneliness of absence is what you feel when you're surrounded by people but disconnected from yourself. It's that hollow ache that comes from giving too much, from being everywhere for everyone and nowhere for yourself. But the solitude of presence, that's something entirely different. It's the kind of solitude that's full, not empty. It's the space where you finally hear your own thoughts, where clarity replaces confusion, where peace settles in after years of anxiety, and where strength quietly grows in the place of old neediness. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. At first, you might feel lost, even a little raw. You'll question if you've made the right choice, if you're being too harsh, if you're losing people who mattered. But as the days pass, you'll notice a shift. The fog lifts. The constant need for validation fades. You start to trust yourself, to enjoy your own company, to realize that your worth was never tied to your availability. This is the path of individuation that Jung spoke about. The journey of becoming who you truly are, even if it means walking alone for a while. And here's the beautiful irony. The more comfortable you become in your own solitude, the more authentic your relationships become. You attract people who respect your boundaries, who value your presence because it's no longer a given. You stop settling for crumbs and start demanding the feast. In this space, you find not just freedom, but a deep, unshakable self-respect, the kind that can only be forged in the fires of solitude. And as you stand in this new strength, you realize that what comes next isn't just survival. It's a rebirth, a new beginning, and the start of a life where you are finally gloriously whole. As we come to the end of this journey, I invite you to reflect. Who truly deserves your energy? Who has earned a place in your presence? Embrace the discomfort of transformation, because on the other side is freedom, wholeness, and a life where you are no longer just available. You are invaluable.